Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today we're dealing with the aftermath of Hurricanes Helene and Milton.
Oh, yeah.
Over 200 lives lost,
Yeah.
widespread devastation across multiple states, and now a controversy is brewing around FEMA's relief efforts.
hmm
Were you following this story at all?
Yeah, I was keeping up with it as much as I could.
A FEMA employee was fired for allegedly telling a disaster relief team to skip any homes with signs supporting President-elect Trump.
Wow.
We're going to try to figure out what we know about this story, what it means, and what could happen next.
Yeah, this situation definitely brings up a lot of questions.
Yeah.
This incident kind of gets at that deeper worry that disaster relief shouldn't be affected by politics.
Right.
It should just be about helping people who need it no matter what.
Exactly. And that's what makes this story so interesting. So let's get into the details. What exactly happened here and what were the first consequences?
Well, we know that a FEMA employee, they haven't released their name,
Right.
allegedly told a disaster relief team to avoid homes that had pro-Trump signs.
Now, FEMA hasn't said exactly when or where this happened, which makes it even more complicated. But for the employee, the consequences were immediate. They were fired right away, and the case was referred to the Office of Special Counsel,
Okay.
which is an independent agency that investigates wrongdoing by federal employees.
Wow, that really shows how seriously they're taking this. It sounds like FEMA is really committed to getting to the bottom of this.
Definitely FEMA Administrator Dean Criswell. She came out strong,
Okay.
calling the employee's actions reprehensible
Right.
and a clear violation of the agency's core principles.
It's one thing to say you're committed to being impartial, but it's another to actually do it when something like this comes up.
Mhm.
So what concrete steps is FEMA taking to deal with this?
They're not just talking about it.
Good.
FEMA started a full investigation into what happened, and they sent new teams to the affected areas to make sure no one was missed for aid.
Okay.
And they're probably going to really emphasize their core values to their 22,000 employees.
Yeah. Just think about that impact, trying to make sure this never happens again.
It's almost like they're trying to rebuild trust not just with the public, but within their own organization, too.
Exactly. And of course, this has sparked a political reaction.
Oh, sure.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, he didn't hold back at all. He criticized the alleged discrimination and started his own state investigation. He called it targeted discrimination and promised to hold those responsible accountable.
And this isn't happening out of nowhere. This incident plays into a bigger fear that's been around for a while, that disaster relief can become political. Have we seen this kind of thing before?
Oh, definitely. Think back to Hurricane Katrina in 2005. There were a lot of criticisms that the government's response was slow and political, and that a lot of people felt abandoned. This FEMA incident is bringing those same fears back.
So how does this incident connect to those broader concerns about FEMA's effectiveness?
Yeah.
And is they're really impartial? It makes you wonder, right?
It does. It raises questions. We still don't know how many homes might have been missed because of what this employee did, and not knowing that is unsettling.
Right.
Even the possibility that it happened makes people trust the system less.
Yeah, it's like a crack in the foundation. Even if it's small, it makes you wonder how strong the whole structure really is.
Right. Makes you think,
It really does.
Makes you wonder, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again,
Right.
How do we prevent these cracks in the first place?
It's a big question. And we can't change what's already happened, but we can definitely learn from it. What do you think?
Well, I think we got to start by talking about FEMA's Code of Ethics.
Okay.
You can actually find it online. It's public. It outlines their commitment to being impartial and treating everyone equally. It's pretty thorough. But as we're seeing, a code alone can't stop individuals from doing things that go against those values.
So it's not just about having the rules. It's about making sure everyone in the organization really believes in those rules.
Exactly. And that takes more than just words on paper. It takes consistent training, clear communication and leadership, setting the right example from the top down.
So you're talking about creating a culture of accountability where everyone understands how important their role is, especially when people's lives are at stake.
Absolutely. And it's also about having strong oversight. Did you remember we talked about the Office of Special Counsel before? That's just one part of it. FEMA also has its own internal groups that watch over things like the Office of Inspector General.
Oh.
Their job is to investigate any accusations of misconduct and suggest improvements.
So it's like a safety net with multiple layers. You have the code of ethics, the training, the leadership, and then these separate groups, making sure everything's working the way it should.
Precisely. And this isn't just about FEMA. These principles are important for any organization that does disaster relief, whether it's the government, a nonprofit, or even a private company. It's about creating a culture of ethical behavior everywhere.
Now let's think about the people in Florida who might have had those pro-Trump signs.
Yeah.
They must be feeling pretty uneasy, maybe even betrayed after this whole thing. What would you say to them?
Their feelings are totally valid. It's normal to feel shaken and distrustful when something like this happens. It's a betrayal of trust.
Yeah.
But I would also remind them that this was one person's actions, not how the whole organization operates.
That's a good point. It's easy to lump everyone together, but we have to remember there are thousands of FEMA employees working really hard to help people affected by the hurricanes.
Right. And to those people who might be hesitant to ask for help because of this, I'd say this. Don't let one person stop you from getting the assistance you need and deserve. Contact FEMA, tell them what you need, and hold them accountable to those standards of impartiality they say they have.
It's about finding that balance, recognizing the broken trust, but also seeing the good work of those who are truly committed to helping.
Exactly. And talking about accountability, we can't just blame FEMA. We as citizens have a role to play too.
Right.
We need to stay informed, ask questions, and make sure our elected officials are ensuring that disaster relief is fair and doesn't become political.
Now, we've talked a lot about guidelines and oversight, but let's get more specific. What would you do if you were in charge of FEMA to prevent something like this from happening again? That's the big question. If you were leading FEMA, what specific things would you do?
It's a huge responsibility, and there's no easy fix. But I think we should start with being really transparent.
Okay.
FEMA already shares some data about how aid is given out, but I would take it even further. Imagine a public website updated live
Oh, wow.
that shows exactly where the aid is going, broken down by demographics, location, even the types of help being given.
So anyone could just go online and see exactly how the resources are being used.
Yep, transparency is key, right? It builds trust and helps us see any unfairness that needs to be addressed.
It would definitely make it harder for any bias to slip through. What else are you thinking?
Training is crucial.
Okay.
And not just the technical stuff about responding to disasters. We need to invest in serious training for all FEMA staff focused on making ethical choices, recognizing hidden biases, and understanding the history of disaster relief and where it can go wrong.
Because even people with the best intentions can have blind spots.
Exactly. And those blind spots can have real consequences, especially in something as important as disaster relief. We need to give FEMA employees the tools to see and challenge their own assumptions and biases.
Okay, so we've got transparency and training. What's the third part of your plan?
Accountability.
Okay.
We need to make the existing oversight stronger and create a system where people are responsible for what they do. And it can't just be internal. I'm talking about an independent board with real power, the power to investigate complaints, suggest disciplinary actions, and even influence policy changes within FEMA.
So you're thinking transparency, training, and accountability all working together to create a stronger and more trustworthy system. It's a huge job, but it seems like it has to be done.
It is. And this conversation isn't just about FEMA. It's about how we as a society respond to disasters. How do we make sure aid is given fairly? How do we build resilience and help those who are most vulnerable? These are questions we need to keep asking, not just after something bad happens, but all the time.
And it's a conversation that needs to involve everyone, government agencies, nonprofits, community groups, and of course us, the citizens. We all have a role in making a fairer and more just disaster relief system.
Absolutely. Because when disaster strikes, it doesn't pick and choose. It affects everyone, no matter their politics, their income, their race, or their religion. And our response needs to show that shared humanity. We need to come together, support each other, and make sure everyone has the chance to recover and rebuild.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive today. We've talked about a lot, from the specific incident with FEMA to the bigger picture of disaster relief and why being impartial is so important.
It's a complicated issue with no simple solutions, but I think we've shed some light on the problems and what we can do about them.
And hopefully we've gotten people thinking and maybe even inspired some action. We encourage you to keep looking into this issue, ask questions, and hold those in power accountable.
Remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to something as critical as disaster relief.
Absolutely. And with that thought in mind, we'll leave you with this. Disasters can bring out the worst in us, but they can also bring out the best. Let's choose to be a force for good, for compassion, and for a future where everyone has the support they need to get through the tough times. Until next time, keep diving deep.